to the World War II newspaper channel where we read the Chicago Tribune one day at a time, going through World War II as it happened through the eyes of those who lived it. If you enjoy content like this, please subscribe to this channel and click on the bell icon to get notifications when a new upload is going to premiere. And also, if you want to hear the actual newsmakers, go check out my other channel, the companion channel to this one, the World War II Old Time Radio channel. There we have vintage broadcasts, including newscasts, speeches, old movies, and music. And subscribe to that channel and click on the bell icon. Now for the newspaper. News as read from the Chicago Tribune for Thursday, January 2nd, 1941. Henry Chop reporting. The weather today, the sun rose at 7:18 a.m., it set at 4:30 p.m. For Chicago and vicinity, cloudy and colder today, rain in forenoon. Tomorrow fair, slightly colder, fresh northwest winds on Thursday. The low temperature, 37 degrees. The high temperature, 43. Today's headline, hit FDR control of money. The Federal Reserve Board, in a special report made public last night, asked for a complete overhauling of New Deal monetary and fiscal policies. A series of measures, including cancellation of the president's powers to devalue the dollar and to issue greenback currency, was recommended. The report declared that the measures are needed to provide adequate safeguards against inflation dangers. The report was prepared jointly by the Reserve Board, the members of the Federal Advisory Council, and the presidents of the 12 central banks of the reserve system. The initiative came from the members of the council and the bank presidents, it was learned. The conclusions set forth represent a complete reversal of policy by the Reserve Board, which has been in disagreement for many years with its advisory council and the heads of many of the reserve banks. The Reserve Board directs the policies of the reserve system and supervises the activities of the member banks. Its members are appointed by the president. Most of the country's banks are members of the system. The 12 regional central banks of the system are subordinate to the board. The recommendations are expected to precipitate a major fiscal war within the ranks of the administration. The new power sought by the Reserve Board would increase its authority at the expense of the Treasury. Secretary of the Treasury Henry Morgenthau Jr. conferred Tuesday in Washington with Chairman Mariner S. Eccles of the Reserve Board. Morgenthau was reported to have tried unsuccessfully to get Eccles to soften some of the proposals. The suggested program is expected to start a major controversy in Congress. Directing attention to the inflationary danger in the greatly swollen supply of bank deposits and surplus bank reserves, the report declares that the reserve authorities are now powerless to deal with the problem. The measures proposed to Congress to meet the situation are, number one, increase in the statutory reserves that the banks are required to carry against their deposits. The present maximum reserve rate of 26% of the deposits required for banks in the largest cities would be increased to a possible 52% at the discretion of the Reserve Board. Corresponding increases would be made in reserve requirements for banks and other groups. The requirements would be extended to apply to non-reserve member state banks. Number two, remove the sources of further potential expansion in reserves by allowing the president's power to issue $3 billion of greenbacks to lapse. Cancel existing authority for further monetization of foreign silver and the authority to issue silver certificates against the written-up value of existing silver stocks. And number three, and the president's power to change further the gold value of the dollar by permitting the present authorization to lapse. And now for world news. With the Greek army on the northern front January 1st, the Greeks today pushed back the Italians on several points in the Lake Ochryda area in heavy patrol actions. The front line of this area has changed most imperceptibly in the last couple of weeks because of the terrific cold. The troops are fighting under conditions similar to those of the Finnish War, and Macedonia is not so accustomed to the cold as Finland. There are 3 feet of snow on the rugged mountains along the front, and temperatures are never above freezing for many days and often 20 degrees below. Frostbite is producing more casualties among the Greek troops than are the Italians. Athens, Greece, January 1st. Stemming fierce Italian counterattacks, the Greeks were reported tonight to have captured an elaborate fortification line outside Klissura and to have turned back a tank assault along the coastal road to the Albanian port of Valona. Bitold, Yugoslavia, January 2nd. The struggle by Italian troops to hold their lines around the southwest Albanian port of Valona and Elbasan, about 60 miles northeast, probably holds the key to the fate of the entire Albanian campaign, neutral observers asserted today. In these quarters, the outcome of the battle now going on in the snow-mantled mountain peaks of southern Albania is considered so far a toss-up. While the Greeks still are keeping the initiative, the Italians, aided by Arctic weather conditions, are reported here as putting up their best resistance since the Greek counter-advance began. The fascists stand around Tepelini, 30 miles southeast of Valona, and Klissura, about 12 miles east of Tepelini, especially has given ground for the belief of some here that the Italians may succeed in staving off the disaster which threatened a few weeks ago. Cairo, Egypt, January 1st. In a series of raids over a vast area extending from Lower Italy to the southernmost gate of the Red Sea, British pilots have bombed half a dozen vital points in the fascist war machine, the Royal Air Force announced today. This aerial offensive began Monday night and continued throughout Tuesday, the British said. London, January 2nd. The British Air Force last night heavily attacked targets at Bremen, Germany, and invasion ports in enemy-occupied territory, an official announcement said today. London, January 2nd. Nazi fireplanes returned to the attack late last night after a bombless British New Year's, dropping incendiary bombs in East England. London had its first 2 alarms of 1941 during the night hours, breaking a calm undisturbed since the city's bath of fire on Sunday night. No damage was reported immediately from the firebombs in the eastern England localities. 2 high-explosive bombs dropped in one London district, causing some casualties. After a long period of quiet, the clear signal sounded about 2 a.m. Then the raiders roared back about 5 a.m. shortly after dawn. Raiders cruised over Liverpool and other Merseyside cities and in the Midlands for several hours, dropping some bombs. No anti-aircraft fire was heard, but the night fighting planes were believed to have operated against the Germans. Dublin, Ireland, January 1st. An airplane of unidentified nationality tonight dropped bombs in County Meath near Drogheda, 30 miles north of Dublin. First reports indicated there was no damage. In the most recent attack on Ireland, whether intentional or accidental, an unidentified raider on December 20th dropped 2 bombs on Doon, Lancashire, a suburb of Dublin, and in Monaghan County. Bombs also have fallen at other points in Ireland. Washington, D.C., January 1st. Military men today expressed the belief that the British have developed a way to equip their warplanes with a detector for locating enemy aircraft in the dark. Ground detectors of that nature have been in use in Britain for some time, and informed sources here said the statement of Air Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding at Ottawa earlier this week that the menace of enemy night bombers would be greatly reduced sometime this spring indicated the device had been adapted for installation in Royal Air Force planes. It's just a repetition of the old military maxim that for every new weapon there is always a defense developed, one official said. The question is whether the British can develop a defense in time. Dowding said the necessary equipment for Britain's new defense was being completed rapidly and by spring would remove the whole weight and sting of the German night bombers. London, January 1st. The Ministry of Economic Warfare today announced the extension, effective January 22nd, of new Navicurt restrictions on Irish exports to Spanish, Portuguese, and most of the French colonies in Africa, including the islands of Madagascar and Reunion. It indicated the success of General Charles de Gaulle's Free French movement has been less than was hoped for. Navicurts also will be necessary for shipments to Syria, Spanish and Portuguese Guiana, Liberia, and the Tangier Zone, Morocco, Spain, including the Balearic Islands, Turkey, Greece, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Hungary, Romania, Switzerland, Finland, and Sweden. Any goods not covered by Navicurts after this date are liable to seizure as contraband. The Navicurt system was not introduced for Ireland before because most Irish goods were sent through Britain. However, it was made known some time ago that all French territory declaring for General de Gaulle would be allowed to import unlimited amount of goods. Navicurts are documents issued by British authorities certifying that shipments have been approved for passage through the British Navy's blockade. Berlin, January 1st. An attack by German warplanes on British naval and merchant ships off England's east coast, in which several of the British vessels were damaged, was reported tonight by DNB, official German news agency. London, January 1st. Sir Robert Leslie Craigie, British ambassador, has been instructed to make inquiries of the Japanese government concerning reports that German ships were being fitted out as sea raiders in Japanese ports. Canberra, Australia, January 1st. Survivors from 7 merchant vessels sunk by German warships in the Pacific disclosed today that passengers and crewmen from 3 other craft still were held captive by the raiders. Vivid stories of the weeks that they also were prisoners came from 496 survivors, including 70 women and 7 children, brought to Australia after they were marooned December 21st on the lonely island of Oamaru. They reported their treatment was good, but rations were short. The thunder of guns and fresh engagements, they said, came to them several times between decks. Some survivors said the German raiders masqueraded under Japanese colors and names. The raider that captured us, said one of the rescued, was steaming under the name of Manyo Meru and was provisioned from a store ship under the name of Tokyo Meru. Immediately before my ship was shelled, the raider hoisted the Nazi flag. Lloyd's Register of Shipping lists a 2,904-ton Japanese freighter, Manyo Meru, and 2 Japanese flag vessels named Tokyo Meru, one 6,486-ton freighter and the other a 903-ton tanker. The former captives, apparently put ashore because the Germans could not continue feeding them, were rescued 4 days later on Christmas Day by an Australian ship. Those reported still held captive were the crews and passengers of the 9,690-ton British ship Turakina, the 7,203-ton Norwegian ship Ringwood, and the 2,489-ton Notu, a French ship. The Turakina, armed with only 1 gun, fought 2.5 hours before surrendering. It was reported 35 members of her crew of 58 were killed. The 7 sunken ships from which the survivors were taken were the 16,712-ton Rangitane and 6,378-ton Triadic, the 6,032-ton Triaster, the 4,413-ton Triona, the 3,900-ton Komata, and the 773-ton Homewood, a schooner, all British, and the Norwegian merchantman merchantman Vinny of 5,181 tons. The Homewood's crew and passengers were under 3 months of floating captivity. The passengers said the raider was a floating fortress. Crewmen of one ship became aware of danger, the survivors said. They were told only when a searchlight suddenly bathed their ship in light and shells began dropping around them. The orangutan suffered many casualties when set ablaze by shell fire on November 26, they said. Food staples for the prisoners were listed as black bread, raw bacon, and sausage. In one case, it was said 132 prisoners were held beneath a single hatch for 3 days with only a pot of rice to share for their breakfast. Captains and crews among the survivors told of being threatened with death if they were again taken by the Germans from armed ships. After being landed on Imeru, an island of the Bismarck Archipelago, 1,650 miles southeast of the Philippines, the survivors obeyed a warning from captors to delay for 24 hours any attempt to reach Cavite in the mandated territory of New Guinea. Later messages were sent to Cavite in a motorboat owned by islanders. Manila, Philippine Islands, January 1st. If Japan should make any assault upon the Netherlands East Indies, strategists here believe the initial attack would not be made against Java, but upon Borneo, with Balikpapan, center of oil refining and shipping, as the first objective. Dutch authorities there are continuing their defense preparations. The Straits of Makassar, between Borneo and Celebes, are under constant patrol of small gunboats and mine layers, while planes daily scout the seas in a radius of 400 miles to guard against any surprise invasion. Balikpapan is more heavily mined than Batavia or Makassar. Its minefields extend miles into the sea, and the safety channel is frequently changed. The approaches have been made so hazardous that all vessels entering or leaving are preceded by minesweepers. The port is open only between 6 a.m. and 3 p.m. The prison at Balikpapan already holds several score Japanese, and several hundred others have been transported to Java prisons. These men, in the guise of fishermen, were found in forbidden waters. Many boats have been confiscated and entire crews swiftly convicted. There was a scare this month when a Japanese tanker arrived seeking a cargo of fuel oil. It was found to have a crew of more than 500. All naval cadets, the commander claimed, they were making a training cruise. Despite a protest, not a person was permitted to land. The tanker was hastily supplied and escorted outside the minefields. London, January 1st. The man who watches over British cables, telephones, mails, and the radio stepped before the microphones last night and told why and how he did it. He is C.J. Radcliffe, acting controller of the press. He described the censorship as the rationing of news. He insisted there was no intention to hide ugly facts from the people, that censorship's only aim was to bar information that might help the Nazis. He asserted that if the government permitted the announcement of town names after every bombing, it would enable the enemy to correct errors in navigation and be more accurate the next time. Istanbul, Turkey, January 1st. Prime Minister Winston Churchill of Great Britain said today in a New Year's message to the Turkish people that in times of stress, it is a blessing to have good friends, and during these hard months that have gone by, we have been fortunate in having the unwavering friendship of Turkey. Reviewing the last year, Churchill said the British were faced with grievous trials. There were moments when even our best friends doubted our ability to pull through, he said. Few still harbor such doubts, no one among the British people. London, January 1st. General Jan C. Smuts, Prime Minister of the Union of South Africa, in a New Year's message to the world published today in London, predicted the United States' intervention in the war and said it was necessary for victory. Deeply as America desires to keep out of this war, they will find the necessity laid upon them, and in the last resort, they will not let freedom perish from the earth, said Smuts, soldier veteran of the World War. I feel assured that American intervention is necessary for victory and for the peace which has to be shaped thereafter. Sofia, Bulgaria, January 1st. Bulgaria's Premier Bogdan Filov, with a powerful German army expanding in Romania, dashed off to Vienna today for his health, leaving the pro-Nazi Minister of the Interior, Peter Giabowski, to act as premier in his absence. Filov's trip was described officially as for medical consultation, but some observers believed his chief object was to learn what Adolf Hitler plans to do with Nazi troops in the Balkans and what part of Bulgaria would be asked to play. Chongqing, China, January 1st. American and British ambassadors and high officials of the German and Italian embassies joined Chinese leaders today in a snake dance which welcomed 1941, the zodiac calendar snake year, and for the Chinese symbolized their hope to return to their government to Nanking before the year is ended. The festivities took place in Chongqing's largest hotel. Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek said in a speech broadcast to China and the United States that 1941 will be the final decisive year in which China will fulfill her destiny in the present struggle against Japanese aggression. Copenhagen, Denmark, January 1st. In a New Year's radio address, King Christian X paid tribute to those few who lost their lives when Germany occupied Denmark last April and expressed hope for a better future. Only the confidence demonstrated in me by my people empowers me to uphold my task for the common benefit, he added. Prominent in my mind are the populations of the Faroe Islands, Iceland, and Greenland with whom we presently are disconnected. May God bless Denmark, the Faroe Islands, Iceland, and Greenland. Vichy, France, January 1st. Tension noticeably increased in official circles tonight as the government awaited amid rumors of ruptured negotiations. Adolf Hitler's reply to the proposals of Chief of State Henri Philippe Pétain for limited French-German collaboration. A Reuters British news agency dispatched from Lisbon, Portugal to London said negotiations between the two countries had been broken off, but this was not confirmed from other sources. The British government met all reports with silence, and at Marshal Pétain's New Year's reception of foreign diplomats, there was no indication of new friction in the negotiations. But Pétain did tell those assembled, "I am certain my country will resume its place among nations." Negotiations between Pétain's government and Germany have been at a standstill since Naval Minister Jean Darlan took Pétain's latest proposals to Hitler somewhere in occupied France on Christmas Day. A reply was not expected before January 3rd, but the subsequent dead silence from the Northeast has caused a flood of rumors in Vichy. In informed quarters, however, a German move to occupy unoccupied France suddenly is not expected. Instead, these sources foresee a possible closing of the line of demarcation to cut communication between occupied and unoccupied France, and therefore cut off food to occupied France except through Germany. Germany might use this situation to force establishment of a friendly government in Paris, possibly under the ousted Vice Premier Pierre Laval, who is in Paris. Offsetting the possible food weapon of Hitler is the question of what might become of the French fleet and what the colonies, particularly those in North Africa, might do. The fleet and most of the empire have sworn fealty to Pétain, and in North Africa, General Maxime Weygand has at his command a sizable colonial army. A few parts of the empire have joined General Charles de Gaulle's Free French movement, which probably would join forces with Weygand if the Franco-German armistice were denounced by Hitler. Berlin, January 1st. Informed person said today that nothing is known here concerning a British report that negotiations between Germany and the Vichy government had been ruptured. Bern, Switzerland, January 1st. The first stay-in test of the strength of General Charles de Gaulle's Free French movement in occupied and unoccupied France passed today without a clear decision. For a week, de Gaulle broadcast appeals to Frenchmen to remain indoors between 3 and 4 p.m. in occupied France and 2 and 3 p.m. in unoccupied France as a protest of sympathy for the Free French movement. Streets were bare almost everywhere in both zones as the hour passed, but whether this bespoke a Frenchman's thoughts of de Gaulle and his movement, or simply the day after the night before, when a Frenchman's fancy finally turns to thoughts of a New Year's dinner and rest, could not be determined. Promptly at the end of the stay-in hour, hundreds of promenaders poured out of their homes. Berlin, January 1st. DNB, the German official news agency, tonight declared Japan will be able to cope with the United States. After stating that Germany bears no ill will toward America and that the hostile policy of the United States government toward Germany is not shared by the American people, DNB added, besides our enemy, England, the official policy of the United States is opposed to the Axis powers. This condition and the resulting circumstances can be fully coped with by the Japanese Empire, which is linked to the Axis by a military alliance and the three-power pact. Peking, China, January 1st. Colonel Alan H. Turnage, commander of United States Marines here today, was understood to be preparing to demand a formal apology from the Japanese for asserted maltreatment of 5 Marines after a cabaret fracas. United States officials declared that all 5 were held 17 hours and that 4 were injured by Japanese gendarmes. The American version was this. The 5 were arrested in the cabaret shortly before midnight Monday by gendarmes who threatened all Marines present with pistols and swords and refused admission to the cabaret to Marine military police. The 5 Marines declared they were insulted and threatened in the cabaret by armed and drunken civilians. London, January 1st. The Polish nation was called upon today to stand by, for the dawn is already nigh, as Germany has traversed the peak of her success in a broadcast made here today by General Władysław Sikorski, Polish Prime Minister and Commander-in-Chief in exile. London, January 2nd. The London Daily Mail reported early today it had picked up a radio broadcast by Joseph Stalin, the Russian dictator, in which he declared Russia is ready for every eventuality and for this purpose is in a state of total mobilization. The broadcast was not reported from any other source. Lisbon, Portugal, January 1st. Walter E. Lucas, Lisbon correspondent of the Times of London, was ordered last night to leave the country within 48 hours because of the government's objection to a series of articles he wrote entitled, In Portugal, Hitler Schemes Against Britain. Bern, Switzerland, January 1st. President Ernest Wetter promised his people in a New Year's inaugural broadcast today that Switzerland's 650-year-old tradition of independence would be preserved through the dark future. The new president asserted that the neutral Swiss must suffer with the belligerents in the European war since world economy was upset by the conflict. Increased production and a careful economy, he said, offer the solution for Switzerland's problems. The Federal Council, which governs the Swiss Federation founded by the men of the foremost cantons in 1291, he added, can and will see to it that the burdens are equally divided. Mexico City, January 1st. A United States Embassy spokesman said today that Henry A. Wallace, United States Vice President-elect, had expressed interest in a proposal to place Spanish Republican refugees in American schools and colleges as Spanish-language teachers. The proposal was made by Indalecio Prieto, former Minister of Defense for Republican Spain, who visited Wallace yesterday. Mr. and Mrs. Wallace intend to fly to San Antonio, Texas tomorrow. London, January 1st. Hundreds of Army engineers today were drafted into the city area, the financial district, with instructions to dynamite buildings in danger of collapse as a result of Sunday night's fire and to hasten a greater cleanup. Military surveyors, the city engineer, and representatives of the London County Council toured the area devastated by German incendiary bombs to list the properties to be blasted. Hundreds of premises are in ruins, demolition experts reported. Some of them are dangerous and have to be dynamited. Even the ruins of famous churches and other noted buildings will have to come down speedily in the interest of safety. Helsingfors, Finland by mail. Although Finland's needs comprise a long list, present developments indicate the country will have a quiet winter. There will be short rations but no starvation, and there is no indication that trouble will develop in Finnish-Soviet relations. Fruits and dairy products are particularly scarce. Many of Finland's dairy farms were located in the Karelian area taken over by Russia, and when the farmers attempted to move their cattle as the region was given up, many animals died from the hardships of travel. City children get 1 liter, 1.056 quarts of milk a day, and adults only 1/4 of that amount. Laborers receive larger allowances than office workers. Coal is extremely scarce. Railroads are burning wood. Illuminating gas is being made from wood. A few persons are operating their automobiles with gas generated from charcoal burners mounted on trailers. These cost about $700. Buses also use the charcoal burners. A small amount of gasoline is rationed, and even taxicabs are allowed only a limited supply. Istanbul, Turkey, January 1st. All foreign governesses, most of whom are German, are being ordered by police to leave Turkey in 15 days. Many are suspected of being spies. Jalapa, Mexico, January 1st. 6 persons were reported killed and several wounded in disorders today in the nearby village of Altatanga. One report said the city hall was fired in a clash between opposing political groups, while another version said the building was fired by prisoners who staged a jailbreak. Firemen left here for Altanaga, which is in Veracruz State. Hey guys, if you enjoy this channel, check out our companion channel to this one, the World War II Old Time Radio channel. Over there, you will hear radio broadcasts of the newsmakers, the news reporters, and various entertainment programs, comedy, drama, horror, all kinds of fun stuff. And you will also get the #1 song every Friday that is represented on that channel as the radio programs correspond with the newspapers that you hear. Each upload premieres the same night the newspaper premieres that you are listening to right now. We even feature movie serials and classic movies on there when YouTube permits it. So swing over to the World War II Old Time Radio channel and click on that bell icon to subscribe. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well and click on that bell icon. I know you'll enjoy them. And now back to national news. In the next 12 months, the aircraft industry in the United States will approach quantity production for the first time in its 37-year history. Never before have orders for aircraft or engines warranted expansive tooling associated with quantity production methods. But today, the industry has $2.25 billion worth of orders with assurances of $3 billion more in 1941. The year 1940 will go down in the industry's history as that of vast expansions. The aircraft manufacturing industry doubled its working floor space, tripled its payrolls, and began for the first time to think in terms of $100 million orders. There were several other important milestones in the industry during the year, including, #1, the 400-mile-an-hour military airplane became a reality. #2, the 2,000 horsepower motor, long a dream of designers and engineers, went into quantity production. 3, the entire world became air conscious for the first time because of Germany's blitzkrieg in the Low Countries and France and the spectacular air battles over England when the Royal Air Force stood as the only bulwark between England and the complete victory for Hitler. #4, aviation services of the United States Armed Forces in one swift jump came from the neglected rear rank of political importance into the place of honor as the service to receive the lion's share of new governmental appropriations. The last year has been a period of great confusion in the industry, yet of great production too. In addition to the expansion program, the manufacturers were able to double the output of military airplanes, engines, propellers, and accessories over 1939's total. And from an average of less than 300 airplanes a month in 1939, including light private and commercial machines, there was an increase of about 900 planes a month now. A large proportion of all military ships, fighters, bombers, reconnaissance, and trainers is going to England under contracts let as long ago as 1938. And throughout the next year, the United States will become to an increasing extent the aeronautical arsenal for Great Britain, with approximately two-thirds of all military planes earmarked for the British Empire. Washington, D.C., January 1st. A new year and a new Congress come in faced with the monumental tasks of building a strong national defense and finding ways to pay for it. A cross-section of opinion, based upon interviews with representative government officials and competent observers of the national scene, leaves no doubt that production for defense is the number one project of 1941. Of almost equal importance will be the fiscal policies involved. Businessmen naturally are vitally interested in what the outlook is for them. Here the word is encouraging with limitations. Government economists predict that the national income in 1941 will reach $80 billion against the current rate of $74 billion. They expect the Federal Reserve Board's Index of Industrial Production, considered the most reliable and inclusive of the business indices, to rise 10 or 15 points during the year to 140 to 145% of the 1935-39 average. The index for December is placed above 130%. A seasonal letdown can be expected at the beginning of the year, according to these economists, with a gradual increase thereafter. They hedge by saying that this rise is contingent upon continuance of the defense program and the expenditures of billions in taxes or borrowed money. They hold that the rise in business activity also depends upon the avoidance of bottlenecks in production facilities and the supply of skilled labor, but predict steps will be taken to avoid any interferences. Government economists do not expect any serious inflationary movement this year, but foresee a trend in that direction and want action to guard against this movement. Federal Reserve Board officials are particularly worried about the vast excess bank reserves and the potential inflation of credit they represent. How prices will be affected by the rapidly growing defense spending is a major economic question facing the country as the new year begins. For several years, there have been warnings that the government's fiscal policies, if continued, would ultimately lead to a drastic increase in commodity prices. The inflationary process by which the undesirable price effect would be produced is now, for reasons of defense, being extended and speeded up. For that reason, businessmen are asking if they must prepare for a steep rise in prices in 1941. The year opens with commodity prices at a level half as high as the 1920 peak, or roughly 80% of the 1926 average. 1926 is the base year used for the Bureau of Labor Statistics Index of wholesale prices. Few predictions suggest that this index, the most comprehensive yardstick of general policies, may reach the 1926 level by the end of this year. However, such a rise would not be considered inflationary by most economists. A 40 to 50% advance in present prices would be more closely approximate their conception of inflation. Actual or potential shortages exist in comparatively few of the 800-odd commodities that make up the BLS price index. These shortages that do exist or threaten are confined to industrial commodities. Rising cost of labor is likely to be the strongest influence for rising prices of specific articles. Washington, D.C., January 1st. The Reuther plan for utilizing automotive industry facilities to turn out 500 warplanes a day was termed impractical today by defense production experts. The plan, calling for use of idle automotive plants and machinery to step up aircraft production, was fathered by Walter Reuther, Director of Organization for the CIO's United Automobile Workers and General Motors plants. Defense experts who declined to be quoted by name listed these obstacles: difficulty of obtaining machine tools, new or old, impossibility of obtaining sufficient aluminum products, Automobile plants already are assigned to production of thousands of engines and other parts for 3,600 bombers, and lack of immediate armament for so many planes. New York, January 1st. Vern Marshall, chairman of the No Foreign War Committee, reiterated tonight his organization's determination to prevent the Roosevelt administration from giving away our national defenses or even lending those defenses. In fact, he said, we don't even favor lending that garden hose to a neighbor since we believe our house to be on fire. Marshall, speaking over the radio, described William R. Davis, wealthy oil executive, as among those who really are his friends and a participant in the committee's campaign. He demanded that the government release to the world an agenda for peace, which he said Davis brought back to Washington from Berlin in 1939. Davis said yesterday that he had submitted a peace plan initialed by German officials and expressed confidence that his information would be made public when, in the opinion of the administration, the best interests of the country can be served. Washington, D.C., January 1st. The military character of the uniformed section of the German-American Bund was revealed in detail today in the publication of the unit's official confidential manual by the Dies Committee on Un-American Activities. The manual, translated from the German, proves conclusively, according to the committee, that the Bund is an absolutely militarized organization patterned after the ruthless military setup which characterized Hitler's machine in Germany. The manual was obtained by the committee in a seizure of the personal effects of William Kuhns, National Führer of the German-American Bund, since the imprisonment of the former leader Fritz Kuhn. It was made public with a view toward apprising the American people of the un-American character of the Bund, the committee said. The translation of the manual runs some 10,000 words and details every step of the organization, uniform insignia, creed, and drill of the orderly service of the Bund. The manual shows the absolute loyalty demanded of the Bund stormtroopers, a loyalty similar to that exacted of their German counterpart by Hitler, and which comes before all else and extends down to the minutest details of the life of the individual trooper. The OD man must understand, the manual states, that from the day on which he became clad in the robes of honor of the OD, renouncing all personal considerations, he became a defender of our movement and its Führers against all subversive and destructive movements from within or without. The OD man guarantees the assurance, at the risk of his life, if necessary, that our movement will continue to remain the relentless opponent of Jewish Marxism and the uncompromising champion of everything that constitutes American Germanic, even though such a course might be regarded as improper by any group within the Bund. Hamilton, Bermuda, January 1st. The House of Assembly today appropriated about $2,000 to help find new homes for St. David's Islanders who will be dispossessed by the new United States defense bases. New York, January 1st. Winthrop Rockefeller, 28 years old, grandson and heir of the late John D. Rockefeller, confirmed today reports that he would enlist in the Army. Winthrop, one of 5 sons of John D. Rockefeller Jr., said he expected to wind up his affairs in the Foreign Department of the Saucony Vacuum Company by January 15th and enlist shortly thereafter as a buck private at $21 a month. He said he had chosen to join for the 1-year period in voluntary selective service. A Yale graduate, Winthrop tried Army life last summer at the Citizens Military Training Camp at Plattsburgh, New York. Washington, D.C., January 1st. With President Roosevelt's plan for lending war equipment to Great Britain and the whole question of American policy toward the European conflict providing a seething controversy, the 77th Congress will convene Friday. Although technically a new session, it actually will be a continuation of the one which began a year ago. Approved the beginnings of the nation's huge defense program, enacted the conscription law, quarreled endlessly over the Roosevelt foreign policy, and at the insistence of the House Republicans and a few Democrats refused to adjourn. Friday's program will be brief and formal. It will consist of the administration of the oath of office to new members, the election of congressional officers, and notification of the president that the session has begun. On Monday, Mr. Roosevelt will address the Congress in person in the House. His fireside chat of last Sunday outlined his views on aid to England in general terms, and many expect his speech to Congress to go into the details on which he did not touch then, especially regarding the lease-lend plan for helping Great Britain. While that will provide the central controversy of the session, the double-headed question of federal finances, taxes, appropriations already has taken on enormous stature. There is to be a new tax bill, and there is much disagreement as to what it should contain. Probably any hard work on it will be postponed until the March 15th income tax returns can be inspected. House committees, however, will make a start on the appropriations at once. Other issues familiar to recent Congress sessions undoubtedly will arise. One group already is laying plans for an effort to enact the Walter Logan Bill, increasing court jurisdiction over such federal agencies as the Labor Board, the Securities Commission, and the Communications Commission. It was passed a month ago, but President Roosevelt vetoed it. Another group is arguing for modifications of the Wagner Labor Relations Act, although recent appointments to the Labor Board have cost this group some adherents, and the House will be called on to decide early in the session whether the DICE Committee on Un-American Activities is to be continued and how much money is to be set aside for its work. Chairman Martin Dies, Democrat, Texas, wants $1 million. Blair, Nebraska, January 1st. This city of 3,275 doesn't understand why it has a reputation for strange happenings unless it is because of such occurrences as these last year. A resident was buried in a suit he ordered for that purpose half a century ago. A thief who stole Chet Hewerman's automobile noticed it contained a new washing machine. Later, he saw the name Hewerman on a farm mailbox, stopped, unloaded the machine, and let it roll into the yard of Hewerman's mother. Lois Williams and Mary Payne abandoned golf when a ram discovered them intent on their game and knocked them down 5 times as they fled. A hen in the Reverend J.D. Johnson's flock laid an egg nearly 8 inches long, followed with one the length of Johnson's fingernail. Houston, Texas, January 1st. City Health Officer John W. Brown said today private physicians had estimated current influenza totals from 20,000 to 80,000 within the city limits. The city, largest in Texas, has a population of approximately 392,000. El Centro, California, January 1st. An earthquake of slight intensity lasting about 3 seconds was felt today. There was no damage. Reports from Tacoma, Washington said a distinct jar, as if from a mild earthquake, also was felt there. Del Mar, California, January 1st. The locomotive and 17 cars of a Santa Fe freight train plunged over a 150-foot embankment near here last night. 3 trainmen were killed, the engine and 9 cars piled up on the beach, and 8 cars catapulted into the ocean. The dead, Glenn A. Dunham, the engineer, C.W. Walden, fireman, and H.A. Williams, head brakeman, all of Los Angeles. The San Diegan and 2-section streamliner bound from Los Angeles to San Diego was halted here. Salt Lake City, Utah, January 1st. 4 skiers were believed buried by a snowslide today on the precipitous north wall of the Little Cottonwood Canyon in the nearby Wasatch Mountains. Edwin S. Stott, manager of a lodge at the Alta Winter Resort near which the slide occurred, says 75 rescuers were digging into a mountain of ice, snow, and earth in an attempt to reach the trapped skiers. 3 hours after the avalanche, a piece of broken ski was recovered, Stott said. New York, January 1st. Raising motor vehicle registrations to a record peak of 31,950,000, the automobile industry in 1940 set its third highest production record in building 4,476,000 new cars and trucks valued at $3,012,100,000, the Automobile Manufacturers Association estimated today. Production was 25% above the 3,577,292 domestic output of 1939. Registrations were 4.4% larger than the 30,615,087 vehicles operating in the United States at the end of 1939. Pending final totals on output, the association listed 1940 manufacturers as 3,705,000 passenger cars, 771,000 trucks valued respectively at $2,413,800,000 and $598,300,000. Hollywood, California, January 1st. Betty Davis of the movies and Arthur Farnsworth, described by friends as a wealthy Boston businessman, were married last night in Rimrock, Arizona, a Warner Studio spokesman said today. The ceremony was performed at the ranch home of Mr. and Mrs. Justin Dart of Chicago. Mrs. Dart is the former Jane Bryan of the movies. Among the witnesses were Mrs. Ruth Davis, the star's mother, and her brother-in-law and her sister, Mr. and Mrs. Robert Pelgrim. After the ceremony, the couple left by automobile for an unannounced destination. It was the second marriage for Miss Davis. In 1932, she was married to Harmon O. Nelson, orchestra leader. After a long separation, they were divorced 2 years ago. Hey guys, if you enjoy this channel, check out our companion channel to this one, the World War II Old Time Radio channel. Over there, you will hear radio broadcasts of the newsmakers, the news reporters, and various entertainment programs, comedy, drama, horror, all kinds of fun stuff. And you will also get the number one song every Friday that is represented on that channel as the radio programs correspond with the newspapers that you hear. Each upload premieres the same night the newspaper premieres that you are listening to right now. We even feature movie serials and classic movies on there when YouTube permits it. So swing over to the World War II Old Time Radio channel and click on that bell icon to subscribe. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well and click on that bell icon. I know you'll enjoy them. And now for local and regional news. 160 men in 9 Chicago Draft Board areas have been notified to report tomorrow for induction into the Army. They are to report at 234 East Chicago Avenue. 56 are volunteers and 104 are draftees. This is the largest group of draftees called from Cook County since the draft law went into effect. The men are the first of a group of 2,600 Cook County residents to be first called into the Army for their first year of training this month. The January call will take 4,739 from Illinois. Chicago's Black Horse Squadron of the Illinois National Guard will leave by train at 2 p.m. today for Camp Livingston, Louisiana, where the men will begin a year's training. The 19 officers and 409 men, commanded by Major Roy D. Keene, Jr., will march from the Armory at 230 East Chicago Avenue to the Dearborn Street Station, where they will join 4 other units of the 106th Cavalry Regiment, of which the squadron is a part. The other units departing are the Regimental Band, the Veterinary and Medical Sections, and the Service Troop of the Urbana Unit. The regiment was inducted into federal service November 25th, but departure for Camp Livingston was delayed because the camp was not completed. More than 125 teachers in Chicago's vocational schools are working double time and are receiving twice their normal salaries as a result of the federal government's emergency defense program to train workers for essential war industries. This situation was disclosed yesterday by Dr. William H. Johnson, Superintendent of Schools. Dr. Johnson said a shortage of qualified vocational teachers in the Chicago area threatened to create a bottleneck in the government's vocational training program started last July. Teachers already working a full 30-hour week in the vocational schools were invited to volunteer to teach an additional 30 hours under the government program, Dr. Johnson said. The defense training classes start at 3:30 p.m. after the close of regular day classes in the trade schools. About 65% of the 200 instructors teaching under the program are getting the double pay, Dr. Johnson said. Their regular salaries average $350 a month, and those working double time receive an equal federal salary. We should like to get teachers from outside the schools for this training, but we can't find any, Dr. Johnson declared. Even in normal times, we have a few applications for jobs as vocational teachers, and now we have even less. These teachers come from industry, and industry itself needs its trained workers now. The government pays all expenses of the training program, but leaves the actual training up to the local schools. Free classes are offered in Chicago for machinists, sheet metal workers, auto and aircraft mechanics, electricians, cabinet makers, welders, and draftsmen. The Illinois Emergency Defense Council of 9 members appointed last week by Governor John Stell will meet for the first time at a luncheon in Springfield next Monday, it was learned yesterday in Chicago. The governor is expected to outline the work of the commission, which will cooperate with the National Emergency Defense Commission by making a survey of Illinois preparedness resources. Governor Stell is ex officio chairman of the commission, and Murray W. Baker of Peoria, an industrialist, is general chairman. Local defense councils cooperate with the state council will establish in all Illinois cities of 10,000 population under a plan announced in Springfield. Paul Hansen, Chicago engineer who was named to head the public health division of the state council, said he expected his work to include surveys of the sanitary conditions of the communities which surround military establishments in the state. Springfield, Illinois, January 1st. In a New Year's message to the people of Illinois, Governor John Stell today offered personal and Democratic Party cooperation to Republican Governor-elect Dwight Green in carrying out his campaign pledge to cut state expenses by $35 million yearly and to have food exempted from the sales tax. The governor expressed his wish for a happy, prosperous, and most important of all, a peaceful new year with the strength and courage to continue in the ways of peace. Several hundred persons attended an open house reception in the Executive Mansion during the afternoon. Speaking over a network of radio stations, Stell told what has been done by his administration since his predecessor, Henry Horner, died last October 6th. He defended the appointments he has made, the pardons he has granted, and the coal contracts awarded, all of which have brought sharp criticism throughout the state. He concluded with a statement that he was willing to let historians in the future write the record and that he has no apologies. Members of the State Commission on the Condition of the Urban Colored Population of Illinois will hold public hearings in the City Council chambers Friday and Saturday, the chairman, Senator William A. Wallace, Democrat, Chicago, announced yesterday. Witnesses will be questioned concerning Negro conditions of employment, housing, health, education, and civil rights, Wallace said. Results of the coming hearings and others throughout the state will be incorporated in a report to the legislature. Jesse Grissom, who was appointed chief of the Illinois Highway Police on December 23rd following the resignation of the former chief Walter Williams, said yesterday he had been unable to fill 100 vacancies in his department. The vacancies occurred when 100 policemen submitted their resignations, effective at the end of the year, to accept jobs as guards at government ordnance plants being constructed near Wilmington. Governor Stell asked Governor-elect Green, who will take office January 13th, to submit names for the temporary appointees, said Chief Grissom. Mr. Green declined. I haven't had an opportunity to hire any new men, but I expect to take the problem up with Governor Stell tomorrow. Chief Grissom said highway traffic at this time is heavy and the men are needed for patrol and accident prevention work. He said consideration is being given to the proposal that American Legion posts furnish men wherever needed for police work in the next 2 weeks. Bertram J. Kahn, president of the Chicago Crime Commission, yesterday termed next Monday's election of officers by local number 278 of the Bartenders Union an event of great importance to the city. The commission is interested in it, he said, because of the fight being made to rescue the union from the grip of gangsters led by Frank the Enforcer Nitti. The outcome of the election, which is to be held in the courtroom of Circuit Judge Robert Jerome Dunn, may mean the end of the domination of unions by Nitti, Danny Public Enemy Stanton, and other criminals, Khan said. If so, he added, it will mark an era in the city's history. Two men entered the Corona restaurant, 531 Rush Street, last night and ordered beers from Charles Terrace, 1336 North Austin Boulevard, Oak Park, the bartender. They sat at a table, sipping quietly for a while. As they got up to pay the bill, they drew revolvers from their pockets and forced Terrace to surrender $95 from the till. Half a dozen patrons seated at their tables were not aware of the robbery. Two tough bandits seized $800 late yesterday in a robbery in the Edgewood apartment hotel, 5726 Winthrop Avenue. As they were menacing the clerk, Miss Marjorie Hayes, 2031 Lincoln Avenue, Max Casper, 4451 North Albany Avenue, entered the lobby. One of the bandits asked if he was the manager, and struck him on the head with a revolver when he did not answer. Port Washington, Wisconsin, January 1st. Erwin A. Christensen, age 31, jeweler, was found shot to death in his home above his downtown store early today. He and his wife Julia had spent New Year's Eve morning among friends at local taverns. Dr. C.C. Stein, Ozaukee County coroner and Christensen's family physician, was called by Mrs. Christensen. The coroner found Christensen in bed with a bullet from a .22 caliber automatic pistol in his head. Christensen was a hunter and occasionally repaired guns for friends at his jewelry store here. Both he and his wife were considered excellent shots. Coroner Stein said an inquest will be held next week. 5 young men were arrested yesterday by North Avenue police for the early morning shooting of John Capella, 24 years old, 747 North Throop Street. Capella is in critical condition in County Hospital with a wound in his abdomen. Lieutenant Anthony McDonough said the shooting was the result of an altercation brought on by too much New Year's Eve drinking. The 5 picked a quarrel with Capella, who was parked in his automobile in front of 1108 North Hoyne Avenue. During the argument, Richard R. David, age 19, of 520 Noble Street, fired the shot. The others arrested are Ed Shalowski, 19, of 1411 Erie Street, Sigmund Debruinswicks, 20, of 1110 North Hoyne Avenue, Stanley Malinowski, age 18, of 1670 Division Street, and Henry Hintz, age 16, of 1100 North Hoyne Avenue. Marriage licenses issued in Cook County last year set an all-time high record, County Clerk Michael J. Flynn reported yesterday. A total of 44,126 licenses was issued, exceeding by 351 the previous peak of 43,775 established in 1936. Flynn attributed the gain to better times and the draft. Rockford, Illinois, January 1st. Dr. H.M. Bannon, Rockford's marrying parson, performed 101 marriage ceremonies during 1940. The number increased his total to 7,850 since he came here April 1st, 1896, as pastor of Trinity Lutheran Church. Only 878 marriage licenses were issued here during the year, making Dr. Bannon's average 1 out of every 9 ceremonies performed in the county. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this channel, check out our companion channel to this one, the World War II Old Time Radio channel. Over there, you will hear radio broadcasts of the newsmakers, the news reporters, and various entertainment programs, comedy, drama, horror, all kinds of fun stuff. And you will also get the #1 song every Friday that is represented on that channel as the radio programs correspond with the newspapers that you hear. Each upload premieres the same night the newspaper premieres that you are listening to right now. We even feature movie serials and classic movies on there when YouTube permits it. So swing over to the World War II Old Time Radio channel and click on that bell icon to subscribe. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well and click on that bell icon. I know you'll enjoy them. And in sports, Pasadena, California, January 1st, Nebraska learned today that Stanford's amazing football team is as good as its followers had claimed. In the presence of 90,000 looking down from the serried heights of the gaily bedecked Rose Bowl, the Cornhuskers, champions of the Big Six Conference, put the Cinderella men to the test and came away soundly beaten 21-13. Stanford had been called lucky. Each of the 9 opponents it trampled down through the most spectacular season in its 50-year history belittled its prowess. Even some of the natives who normally could enthuse over the homicide if it carried a California label were lukewarm toward the team which had risen from last place in the Pacific Coast Conference a year ago to an unbeaten and untied season. But this afternoon, in the climax of a day of pageantry and fiesta, Stanford proved itself as mighty as its record with a domination of fundamental football that swept the powerful Cornhuskers into an honorable but decisive defeat. Stanford rallied twice to gain the lead in the first half and made safe its margin with a third-period touchdown that squelched the last hopes of 10,000 Nebraskans, the largest visiting delegation ever to attend this annual holiday game. Stanford met Nebraska's every challenge. After Nebraska had carried back the opening kickoff and marched 47 yards to a 7-point lead on Vike Francis's 2-yard plunge and his point-after touchdown, Stanford roared back to tie the score on the first of 2 touchdowns by Chicago's Hugh Gerlanow and the first of Frankie Albert's 3 conversions. In the second period, Nebraska again put the issue up to the so-called Wow Boys from the farm, as the Stanford campus is known hereabouts. Took a 13-7 lead on Herman Rohrig's 33-yard pass to Alan Zikmund, a rangy sophomore halfback who hardly expected to get a chance in this important game and wound up as one of the stars. Stanford received the ensuing kickoff and, without surrendering the ball, advanced 65 yards in 8 plays to even the count again on a perfectly executed and spectacular 40-yard pass maneuver, Albert to Gallarino. Albert's kick for the extra point sent Stanford ahead, and thereafter Nebraska, the team whose superior reserves were expected to be the difference between victory and defeat, definitely was at the mercy of Stanford's white-shirted horde. The final touchdown of the afternoon came on Pete Komatnik's 38-yard run of a punt. It followed the one development of the second half that gave Nebraska cause for rejoicing. Stanford had moved 69 yards up the field to the 2-yard line where it was first down. 4 times Stanford hurled its might at the line, and 4 times Nebraska beat it back, taking the ball on the 1-yard line on downs. Then Rohrig kicked out to Kometovic. If the first down had left the jury of 90,000 without sufficient evidence of Stanford's greatness, this play closed the case. 10 Cornhuskers were knocked to the turf, permitting Kometovic to run to one sideline, reverse his field, and scamper to the other side of the gridiron. Only Francis, the Nebraska fullback, had a chance to reach Kometovic, and he was removed by Dick Palmer, a 205-pound guard, with a block that sent Francis flying into the air and dumped him on his head. Stanford's widely publicized man-in-motion offense, said to have been copied from the Chicago Bears, only basically resembled the attack with which the Bears won the professional championship. For the most part, the Indians, flawlessly directed by Albert, left the hand passer and kicker relied on plays not in the Bears' repertoire. In Albert, Gallineo, and Kometovic, Stanford had 3 backs who contributed more than their share, making this game the most interesting in the opinion of Rose Bowl veterans since Notre Dame's four horsemen turned back Ernie Nevers and Stanford on the same turf on January 1st, 1925. Galarnio provided the power that kept Nebraska's defense drawn in. Kmetovic was the open field threat that kept Husker secondary tensely alert, and Albert was the guiding genius who took advantage of every Nebraska mistake. These backs, with the help of Norman Stanley, the big fullback who had been hampered by an injury ankle, far exceeded any ball carriers on the Nebraska lineup except Francis. They also had the advantage of deploying behind a line that outcharged the out-rugged Cornhuskers. Outstanding among the linemen were Vic Landskog, the former junior college blocking back who played most of the game at center, and Stan Graff, a 180-pound end. Nebraska lost no time carrying the issue to Stanford. Albert invited trouble by topping the opening kickoff. It bounded to Francis, who came back 28 yards to the Indians' 47-yard line. The big fullback carried the ball on the first three plays and blasted the line for a total of 25 yards. Walter Luther broke outside Stanford's left tackle, Bruno Banducci, for 13 yards, making it first down on the 9-yard line. Francis added 2, Luther one inside Banducci for 5, and then Francis shot between Banducci and Graff for a touchdown. Stanford's tying touchdown was set up by Kmetovic's 13-yard return of Hop's punt and his 30-yard run outside left tackle on first down. This placed the ball on the 18-yard line. Galarnio lost 2 on a sweep around end, and Kmetovic kept the advance alive by popping through the line for 11 yards. Galarnio then negotiated the final 9 plays on a similar play through the other side of the line. Midway in the second period, Herman Rohrig's 45-yard quick kick on third down surprised the Stanford secondary, and Kmetovic attempted to make a catch while going back fumbled. Zygmunt recovered on Stanford's 33-yard line. Rohrig rifled a pass to Zygmunt, and the latter gathered it in behind the Stanford secondary on the 10-yard line. He staggered across the goal line in the arms of a tackler. Rohrig's place kick for the extra point was blocked. Rohrig then immediately courted disaster by sending the ball out of bounds on the kickoff. Stanford put it in play on its 35-yard line. Stanley passed 8 yards to Graff, plunged 3 yards for first down, and added 5 more yards. Albert, taking a lateral to Stanley, ran around end for 6 yards, and Kmetovic got 2 to move the ball to the 40-yard line. Then Galarnio broke through the line, hustled through the secondary, and took Albert's pass on the 20-yard line. Rohrig came up to make the tackle, but Galarnio shook him off and scored easily. Albert's kick put Stanford ahead. Miami, Florida, January 1st. Mississippi State's football team scored 2 touchdowns in the first half and then staved off Georgetown's desperate comeback to win the 9th annual Orange Bowl football game 14-7 before an overflow crowd of 35,101 today. The Mississippi State line rose to great heights, and the Maroons' famous J-Boys, Jefferson and Harvey Johnson, harassed the Hoyas, who suffer their second defeat in 3 years. A guard, Captain Hunter Corhern, was the hero of Mississippi State's first touchdown. Johnson's well-placed punts put Georgetown in a hole, and Daniels tried to kick out from his end zone. Corhern came tearing in to block the punt with one hand on the goal line, and John Tripson, a tackle, fell on the ball in the end zone. Wilbur Dees, State's blocking quarterback, converted from placement. Billy Jefferson was the engineer as State's machine clicked to its second score. Jefferson sped 16 yards around end to begin the drive and later pitched a 21-yard pass to Walter Craig 8 yards from the Georgetown goal. Jefferson and Toxitulos lugged the ball within a foot of the goal as the first quarter ended. Jefferson went through tackle for the touchdown, and Sonny Bruce came in to kick the 14th point. Georgetown began to pick up steam before the half. moving 29 yards once and 26 again, but didn't get beyond Mississippi State's 30. The Hoyas scored the first time they got their hands on the ball in the third quarter, however. A holding penalty set Mississippi State back to its one, and Johnson's punt rolled dead on the Maroon 48. Koshlap sent a short pass to Jim Castiglia, who ran 18 yards and followed with a neatly placed whirl to Lo Gekas for 27 more and a first down on the 3. Castiglia dug through guard for the touchdown. Augie Leo converted. Early in the fourth, Georgetown began moving again on a 69-yard drive, aided by 3 state offside penalties. Ben Bolvin's 2 short passes coupled with his and Castiglia's line plunges moved the ball to the 6. Mississippi State's end Buddy Elrod helped stop the assault in a goal line stand. Jack Doolin's 4th down pass intended for John Lascari fell incomplete. Georgetown actually outgained Mississippi State both rushing and in the air. Dallas, Texas, January 1st. For 10 minutes this afternoon, the white-shirted lads from Texas A&M played the kind of football that had brought them Southwest championships for 2 consecutive years. In this brief time, 2 brilliant sorties carried the Southerners to a 13-12 victory over Fordham's Rams. The Aggies won by the margin of Marion Pugh's place kick after the second touchdown. The result, of course, was satisfactory to the throng of nearly 47,000 that jammed every seat in the Cotton Bowl, even though the Aggies failed to perform as well as their adherents had expected. Big John Kimbrough, unanimous choice for fullback of 1940, occasionally burst through the rugged Ram wall, but neither he nor his mates linked together a concerted drive. Moreover, Fordham supplied most of the thrills, not only because the Rams fought furiously against the odds, but because of their fourth period rally that could have tied the score with benefit of the extra point. Fordham made 2 serious threats in the first 25 minutes of the game before it finally drove 20 yards after Joe Ungerer blocked an Aggie 4th down punt. From this point, the Rams scored in 6 plays. Len Eschmont and Jim Blumenstock reached the Aggies' 9-yard line. After an incomplete pass, Jim Noble took the ball from Steve Filipowicz on the hoary Statue of Liberty play and won around right end to the 1-yard line. Filipowicz then scored on a plunge to the weak side after a right shift. Steve Hudacek missed the try for the extra point. The Aggies tied the score on the second play from scrimmage in the second half. They had possession on their own 35-yard line after Fordham's kickoff had gone out of bounds. On the first play, Earl Smith carried the ball for 3 yards. Then, with no Fordham player detecting him, Smith went wide to the right and raced downfield behind Eschmont to take Pugh's long pass. Smith caught the ball on Fordham's 35-yard line and sprinted out of reach of Eschmont's desperate tackle. Fortune frowned on Fordham's efforts to break this tie, and 2 pieces of bad luck set up the Aggies' second touchdown. Darius Moser, Aggies halfback, jammed the Rams back against their own goal line when he kicked out of bounds on Fordham's 4-yard line. The Rams got away from danger apparently when a surprise forward pass by Blumenstock, standing in his own end zone and in punt formation, was caught by Noble. But Noble, penned against the sideline on his own 30-yard line, tried to lateral to Tom Bennett. The pass was thrown forward, however, and this second forward pass on the same down canceled the gain, sent Fordham back on its own 4-yard line. This time Blumenstock kicked and Moser took the ball in midfield. He headed toward the east sideline and outran the 4 Fordham men who were covering the punt. He finally was down on Fordham's 25, but on the play, Captain Lou DiFilippo was convicted of roughness on Fordham's 15-yard line. The assessment gave the Aggies possession of the ball on Fordham's 1-yard line. On the first play, Kimbrough lunged at defensive right tackle, but swerved and skirted the end to score standing up. Pugh's successful kick for the point sent the Aggies ahead 13-6. Just before the end of the third period, Fordham started its second scoring march from the Aggies' 44-yard line, where Al Santilli, a substitute tackle, had recovered Joe Roth's fumble of Blumenstock's high punt. An Aggie offside and a 2-yard plunge finished the quarter. Filipowicz's pass to Sam Ratinsky was good for a first down on the Aggies' 28. Eschmont got 8 yards around defensive left end, and 2 consecutive plunges by Filipowicz registered a first down on the Aggies' 15-yard line. Blumenstock erased this distance on the next play, cutting back inside of right tackle and weaving past the defensive halfback to sprawl on the goal line. For the second time of the game, Hudacek was sent from the Fordham bench to kick the point. The first time he was blocked by Jim Sterling. This time the ball bounded from the outstretched hands of an Aggie lineman, carried to the goal post, but landed on the crossbar and then rolled off on the gridiron side. New Orleans, Louisiana, January 1st. Move over, Davey O'Brien, Bobby Kellogg, John Kimbrough, and other stars of Sugar Bowl football games. You've got to make room for a 158-pound halfback named Charlie O'Rourke, who today sparked Boston College to a 19-13 victory over Tennessee in as thrilling a contest as this brilliant competition has produced. O'Rourke's flaming courage and mechanical skill electrified 73,181, the largest crowd in the history of the Sugar Bowl, when he led his team in an 80-yard march for the deciding touchdown at a time when Boston supporters were willing to settle for a 13-13 tie. The play-by-play detail of Boston College's winning touchdown will give you some idea of the heights to which O'Rourke rose when the going was toughest and the clock was nearing the end of its route. Boston took the ball on its 20-yard line after Tennessee's unsuccessful try for a field goal from the 12. O'Rourke found an opening at his right tackle for 5 yards. Francis Maznicki, whose exploits this day deserve a star-spangled chapter in the Eagles' gridiron annals, gained a first down and 2 thrusts at the Tennessee line. This is where O'Rourke took over the game. Famed as the best forward passer in the East, he whipped 2 aerials, one to Henry Chachalowski and another to Maznicki, which fell incomplete. On the third down, he connected with a toss to Ed Zabaliskie at midfield. The same play gave the Eagles another first down on the Volunteers' 31. O'Rourke's next pass was a short throw to Maznicki for 7 yards. On the following play, he faded back as if to throw another forward, but instead he darted off to his left tackle, cut back to the right, and eluded one Tennessee tackler after another until he crossed the goal line standing up. Maznicki's try for point was wide, but nobody cared. Less than 2 minutes remained to play, and O'Rourke himself paralyzed the champions of the Southeastern Conference by intercepting one of their passes, thereby definitely ending their last faint hope of snatching victory out of the ashes of defeat. Boston College was the best coached team we have looked at this season. There was a versatility to its attack that obviously befuddled the boys from Knoxville in the last 2 periods. The Eagles, always a gambling, take-a-chance team, relied on a 5-man line to stop an offense that had riddled every opponent in its path, and they did it to fare the well, with the exception of a few minutes in the opening quarter when Tennessee put on a magnificent drive that carried 46 yards for its first touchdown. Tennessee was supposed to have as strong tackles and ends as you could find in intercollegiate ranks this season, but they frequently speed and effective blocking of the team from New England. Robert Fox was Tennessee's best ball carrier. He averaged 6 yards and 7 trips with the ball, but there were other volunteer backs who annoyed the Eagles more than Fox. One of them was Buist Warren of Miami, Florida, whose accurate passing was a constant threat. Tennessee got a break shortly after the opening kickoff when O'Rourke fumbled while returning a punt from Fox. The bounding oval was recovered by Ackerman of Tennessee on the Eagles' 27-yard line. It looked as if the Volunteers were on their way to a touchdown when Thompson bolted through the center of the Boston line for a first down. On the next play, Gladchuk, the Easterners center, stopped Noling, Tennessee fullback, after he had picked up 2 yards. George Kerr, the Eagles' right guard, who next year will enter the Jesuit seminary to study for the priesthood, broke up a forward pass intended for Fox. O'Rourke batted down another aerial from Thompson, this one aimed at Coleman, and on fourth down, Manzo, Boston's left tackle, dumped Thompson on the 16-yard line, and the ball went over to the Eagles. Tennessee's line was much too strong for the lighter boys from New England, and it smothered Boston's first 2 running plays. On third down, O'Rourke kicked out of bounds on his 46-yard line. A second break was all the Volunteers needed. Thompson whipped the pass to Fox, which O'Rourke knocked down, but the toss was ruled complete because of alleged interference on Boston's 33. Thompson lost a yard at center, but clicked with the pass to Coleman on the 22-yard line. Thompson cracked through the Eagles' middle for 5, and Fox, on a reverse play, gained a first down on the 12-yard line. On the next play, Thompson found a hole inside his left tackle and raced over the goal line standing up. Fox, with Thompson holding the ball, kicked the point that gave Tennessee a 7-0 lead. Boston College flashed its first offensive power late in the opening quarter after getting the ball on its 20-yard line when Tennessee's Warren kicked out of bounds. O'Rourke, deploying behind devastating blocking, went around his right end for 13 yards. Holovic pounded the center of the line for 9. Gooderalt grabbed O'Rourke's pass and sped to Tennessee's 33. O'Rourke bolted through his right tackle for 9, and Mesnicki made it first down on the Volunteers' 20. The Eagles' downfield flight was checked when Siffers, Tennessee's right end, intercepted O'Rourke's short pass over the line intended for Gooderalt. Siffers lateraled to Warren, who came back to his 26 as the first quarter ended. Boston's first touchdown drive was set up when Harry Worochicks blocked Fox's punt in the third quarter, Ed Zablinski recovering for the Eagles on the Volunteers' 17-yard line. This was the first time in 7 years an opponent had blocked the Tennessee punt. Mesnicki sped around his left end for 4 yards, and on the next play, Connolly with Warrenicks clearing a path, went around the right flank for a touchdown. Mesnicki kicked the point, which tied the score at 7-7. Gladchuk kicked out of bounds intentionally on the kickoff, but the oval sailed over to the sidelines on the 45-yard mark where Tennessee took possession. Thompson got 5 yards at center, and Fox won 10 before Mesnicki grounded him. Thompson scooted around end for 9, and Newman made it a first down on Boston's 28. After Newman picked up 2, Thompson passed to Siffers for 12. Thompson was trapped for a 2-yard loss, but on the next down, passed to Siffers. The ball fell several feet away, but field judge Ray Barbuti ruled that Ed Zabilski had interfered with Siffers, and the ball was given to the Volunteers on the 2-yard line. Newman got a yard at center, and Warren went over at the same spot for a touchdown that put Tennessee ahead. The pass from center was bad on the try for point, and Newman was caught trying to run the ball over the goal. Boston College came back with its tying touchdown before Tennessee rooters could regain their composure. Tennessee kicked off to the Eagles' 31, and the Easterners never relinquished the ball until Holovac, great sophomore right halfback, crossed the goal line on the 9th play. Connolly went over right guard for 9. A 15-yard penalty on the Volunteers moved the ball into their territory. Connolly passed to Neumetz on Tennessee's 33. Mesnicki gained 8 on a reverse from Connolly. Connolly cracked through his right tackle for a first down on the 10. Holovic picked up 3, and Mesnicki on the razzle-dazzle play, which sends 3 backs 15 yards to the right, put the ball on the 2-yard line. Holovic plunged to within 6 inches of the goal and went over on the next play. Masnicki tried to score the extra point on a line buck, which fizzled. The Detroit Red Wings last night beat the Blackhawks for the fourth time in 4 tries this season, this time by the score of 4-1. While most of the holiday crowd of 15,308 in the Chicago Stadium found the score eminently unsatisfactory, they also found excitement galore, especially in a free-for-all fight of exceptional violence. The brawl resulted in 3 Wings and 3 Hawks drawing major penalties. The epidemic of fighting, which has been raging in the National League for the last week or so, reached Chicago late in the first period last evening and was the tip-off of the genuineness of the same being when the boys took off their gloves and started slugging. It was the most spirited hockey fisticuffing seen in the stadium in several years, the extraordinary violence being inspired by the fact that the outbreak started when Eddie Wares attacked old man John Gottselig. Johnny Mariucci and Pep Kelly were the first to remonstrate. After referee Bill Stewart and linesman Donnie McFadden had calmed the scene, they held a conference and assessed 6 major penalties. Apart from such wounds as were inflicted in the hostilities, it was learned after the game that both Mariucci and goalie Paul Goodman will be out because of injuries incurred during the play. Mariucci will be idle for a week and Goodman indefinitely. Sam Lepresti probably will be recalled from Kansas City to fill in for Goodman. As for hockey playing, the Hawks at times looked rather ludicrous after taking a 1-0 lead on a goal by Gottselig 1 minute and 52 seconds after the start of the game. The Wings tied the count in 7:07 of the first period when Carl Litscomb scored while Paul Goodman, Hawk goalie, was sprawled on his belly 20 feet or so in front of the cage. Less than 3 minutes after the tying goal, Wares nudged a counter past Goodman on a pass from Abel. Goodman seemed to have lost sight of the puck. The Wings also made the Hawks look futile as the third Detroit goal was produced in 8:20 of the second period. Mariucci, apparently confused by the new Hawk uniforms, checked Gottselig into the boards, and as the teammates sought to straighten out, Sid Howe picked up the rubber to easily beat the unprotected Goodman. The fourth Detroit goal was embarrassing to goalie Goodman. In 11:58 of the third period, Eddie Goodfellow batted a rolling puck as it emerged from the faceoff and it sailed from the blue line into the Hawk cage. A hockey game between the Chicago Blackhawks and the Detroit Red Wings in Chicago Stadium almost precipitated a general fight last night when one of the Detroit players slugged a spectator, knocking him unconscious. Hundreds of other spectators swarmed out on the ice and several started after the slugger, but he eluded them as stadium ushers pushed the crowd back. The victim of the attack was Charles Yo Freeman Jr., a businessman and son of the chairman of the board of the Commonwealth Edison Company. The younger Freeman is a Princeton graduate. His wife is the former Miss Helen Marie Castle, and their marriage at the Fortnightly Club in 1934 was an event of the social season. Freeman's assailant was Giacomo Jimmy Orlando, known to his Detroit followers as the last of hockey's bad men. Shortly after the brawl, a squad of police from the Warren Avenue station in charge of Sergeant James P. Fiorito went to the stadium with orders to arrest Orlando. By that time, however, he had disappeared. The slugging of Freeman was the second disturbance of the night, in both of which Orlando figured. During the second period, players on both teams engaged in a fistic free-for-all, and several were knocked down. The apparent cause of the scrap was Orlando's rough tactics in tripping Blackhawk players and in other ways interfering with their play. He was continuously booed by the more than 15,000 spectators. As the game ended, Orlando skated over to the Warren Avenue side of the stadium. Freeman was standing just inside the hockey rail separating the arena from the seats. The two men exchanged words, and the hockey player punched over the rail and hit Freeman on the chin. The blow struck without warning, according to Ivan D. Karlstrom, 2653 Milwaukee Avenue, a witness. Early today, Lieutenant Walter McGloon questioned Freeman at the latter's home at 1512 North Dearborn Street. Freeman said he would not prefer charges. New York, January 1st. Alfie Pike, the New York Rangers forward, fired a pass into his own cage tonight and gave the Montreal Canadiens a 2-1 victory in the National Hockey League game in Madison Square Garden. Boy, it's just getting worse for those Canadiens, huh? They are in last. The break of the game, ending a 1-1 deadlock that threatened to go into overtime, came in the 14th minute of the third period when Tony Grabowski, Canadiens utility defenseman, flicked a short pass 5 feet in front of the Ranger cage. Pike wheeled to clear it and banged the rubber into his own net behind the astonished goalie Davy Kerr. Oh, I'm sorry, Montreal won that game. They won that game, so they got a little bit of good luck there. Loyola meets Kansas. Big Six defending champions, and DePaul faces Santa Clara tonight in another of the series of Coliseum basketball doubleheaders. The bill brings together four of the nation's outstanding teams. Kansas will send another small team against the rapidly improving Loyola 5. The Jayhawkers lineup will include players who last year whipped Southern California in the semifinals of the NCAA tournament, only to lose to Indiana in the finals. Santa Clara, seeking revenge for the 52-50 defeat it suffered by DePaul last year, will present the most powerful team in its history. Leading the Broncos will be forward Bruce Hale, the team's leading scorer the last two seasons. Santa Clara's height average of 6 feet 2.5 inches matches that of DePaul's Blue Demons. The Demons' record stamps them as one of the greatest teams in the school's history. Their last two victories have been scored over Purdue, Big Ten champion, and Butler, Indiana Conference champion. Kalamazoo, Michigan, January 1st. The Western State teachers' fast-breaking attack was too much for the University of Chicago 5, and the teachers won 59-48 tonight. Chicago's Bruins lost their third straight National Basketball League contest last night 34-32 despite a wild rally at the finish. The Sheboygan Indians were the victors before some 2,000 fans at the 132nd Regiment Armory. Otto Kolar of Cicero, who has captured Sheboygan for the past few years, scored 4 baskets in the final period for the winning margin for the Sheboygan Quintet. The Bruins led at the half 18-16. And that is sports, and that is the news as read from the Chicago Tribune. Henry Chop reporting for Thursday, January 2nd, 1941. Have a swell day, and God bless.